Well, howdy, friends. This is Matthew Sewell, and you're listening to episode 115 of the Popecast, a podcast about popes where you'll find non-boring stories on the successors of St. Peter and a reminder that all the world's problems have happened plenty of times before. This week, we are back with, for a fourth time, I believe, you'll hear in the very beginning, with our friend of the show, Father Richard Kunst, the curator of the largest private collection of papal memorabilia outside of Rome. He told me on the visit to Minneapolis when that we talk about in the show that it's not just the Vatican collection in Rome that is obviously larger than his, but there's actually a guy similar to him. He happens to be a bartender instead of a priest, who maybe is a little bit older than that actually has a larger private collection than he does, but he happens to live in Rome. So Father Rich's collection is the largest in the world outside of Rome. So we talk about that, specifically about his Vatican unveiled exhibit. So I think you'll enjoy hearing all about that. A quick little note. So we talk about a lot of the items in the collection that he had featured. He asked me what my favorites were. I had an opportunity to go out and see it in person. The last weekend the exhibit was open in the Mall of America. So if you'd like to see those, I'll make sure as I send out this episode, if you go to popes.substack.com, I'll make sure to accompany the episode link with all of the photos of the items that we talk about. You can also find those, a lot of the things that we feature and that we talk about in the episode, I've already posted about on Instagram, so you can follow the Popecast if you're not already at the Popecast on Instagram. And then if you're a new listener or old, you've been enjoying the show, or somebody had referred you to it and you'd like to support our work, you can also do that at Substack as well. So popes.substack.com. There's an opportunity, of course, to be a free subscriber. All that content is always going to be free to listen to. But of course, this takes time and effort and resources to produce and to keep running. And we have great plans for the future. So if you'd like to, if you feel called to monetarily support the show, you can do that there. Now, here's Father Rich. Well, welcome back to the Popecast. Joining us, is this the fourth time, did we say?
I think it's the fourth time.
On the show. Wow. All right. Yeah, a record fourth. It was a record third time when you were on before, but now it's a record fourth time. And Armed and Dangerous, as it turns out, we were discussing Father Rich's various papal artifacts that he has in his house. Normally we're interviewing from your office, but yeah, welcome back, Father Rich. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks. And if you don't mind, I am armed right now. This is my papal gun. This is from the 1830s, and it's got the papal coat of arms on it. And the reason I've got this gun right now, Matt, is because I'm going to hunt down the guy that stole my baseball signed by Pope Francis at the start of the exhibit. So there's nothing quite like poetic justice by being, I'm not going to gun him down, but at least being cornered with a guy with a papal gun who stole papal baseball. So
there's some sort of
that's not for
disclaimer.
real. For anybody that's watching this, I'm not really serious about that.
I was just going to say, yeah, there's if Bishop Felton, if you're listening, there's a disclaimer, whatever. Well, I'll put some fine print at the bottom of the screen or something like that. But but no, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But the reason Father Rich is joining us this time around is I guess it's been about a month since it wrapped up. But he had an incredible exhibit that was in the Mall of America. A giant exhibit that still only exhibited a small portion of your entire collection. I had the opportunity to go out over a weekend and see it for myself, and it was incredible. So Vatican Unveiled, that's what it was called. So we're just going to kind of talk about the ups and downs and joys and surprises.
Well, and I kind of want to know what your. I mean, you said, yeah, it's super cool and amazing, but I wanted to hear a little bit more in depth about what your impression of it was.
Yeah,
I know you're the interviewer, but
sure. Well, no, I'm perfectly fine with that. Maybe before we get to that, so just give it an overview of what the event was.
So the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis reached out to me in regards to having a display somewhere in the Archdiocese in commemoration of their 175th anniversary. So that's what it was. And we, after checking out many venues, we landed on the venue of the Mall of America, which turned out to be a very good venue for various reasons. And so it went on for basically 3 weeks and 4 weekends. And we had maybe just shy of 15,000 people come through. we had probably about 300 things on display, and as you said already in the intro, that's probably about a third of the collection, if that, maybe.
Yeah. Wow. No, it was. I mean, it was something I've never experienced before. Obviously, you have as well. I've been through the Vatican museums, which is second to none. But it's just a little bit different when it's a private collection. You know, you expect the Vatican to have all their treasures on display,
Yeah.
and you have some treasures that match up with what the Vatican museums have, but
Oh,
you
for
also
sure.
have on display a lot of things that are just normal human usage items. So socks, belts, straight razor of Pius X. I remember seeing. Um, so that was kind of made it all the more special. But yeah, I mean, my impression was first I have to thank my wife who was very very pregnant, less pregnant than she is right now. She's due any day now.
Oh,
But she's very
geez.
pregnant and three little boys at home. So I of course have to thank her for letting me gallivant off to Minneapolis for a couple of days. There was turmoil downtown. So when I would tell people I was going to Minneapolis for the weekend, they were saying,
Are
"Now
you
what?" I
crazy?
think my dad said, "What are you going to Minneapolis for again?" I said, "I'm just gonna be out by the airport. Don't worry." But no, I mean,
Yeah,
it was really neat. I was gonna love it no matter what because it was, I'm a Pope nerd, obviously. But there was stuff that still surprised me, floored me. Some highlights that I can think of: the giant Galero, the huge red
yeah,
hat of Pius XII.
yeah,
It's just so imposing, and the stuff that shouldn't exist. I remember there were several things that you said shouldn't exist, but it does. So there was
yep.
I forget the official name of it, but the papal
The
stamp that's
Matrix.
normal. Yeah, the
Yeah,
matrix that's supposed to be destroyed when the Pope
yeah,
dies, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Somehow that one survived. The Galero is normally hung from the rafters of a cardinal's cathedral when he dies, but it wasn't the case with this one. And then the wooden bust of Saint, how do you pronounce his name? Deus
Deus
Dedit.
dated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
1,400-year-old relic of his, a really big relic, and then a
yeah.
500-year-old carved wooden
Right.
bust. And I'll try to superimpose the pictures of these things
It's right
as we're
over there.
talking about them.
I'm looking at it right now.
Hey, if you want to have it live on the air, by all means. So several of those things, a lot of things from John Paul II, I loved. We've talked about John Paul I before. You had quite a few things from him as well. So just the rare things that aren't maybe as what you would think would be really popular. So the places like the Vatican, official diocesan museums or whatever don't put those things out. But
Right.
when you have them laid out, it reminds you that the Pope were men who were sinners, just like us. They just happened to find themselves as the bishops of Rome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the stuff that was at the Vatican unveiled would not be in the Vatican Museum because the Vatican Museum does not have the day-to-day things that the popes use. So what was unique in that regards that there is no museum I'm aware of that actually has that you can see. So is unique
Hmm.
in that opportunity.
Yeah, it was such a wide array because you had the oldest item in your collection was not, aside from the relics, was 900 years old. That document from that had
Oh, yeah, from Alexander
Alexander
the
this,
Third.
yeah,
Yeah.
Alexander the Third. So stuff like that. But then there's stuff that's only 50 years old, only quote unquote.
Yeah.
But it was your disposable camera from when John Paul II came to
Yep.
St. Louis, his chasuble from World Youth Day, and his
And
mitre.
the little Vatican flag that flew up in the Soyuz space
Oh,
capsule.
right, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. So many cool things, and it was. I don't know what I was expecting attendance wise, but I mean, I hoped obviously for your sake that it was going to be really popular. But yeah, the
Yeah.
first morning I was there, I think was it a Thursday or a Friday, opening at 10 a.m. and there was where it was placed in the Mall of America was at the end of one of its transepts, whatever, for lack of a
Right.
better term. But there was this big semicircle, huge semicircle, and it was pretty much full
Yeah.
of people waiting to get in. And
Yeah.
it was jammed, especially Saturday, the last day that I was there, jammed wall to wall,
Yeah.
which is incredible because if I'm impressed, if you're impressed by these things, and we
Right.
love the popes as much as we do already, for people like that to be similarly amazed and want to go through it.
That was exciting for me. That was the fun part of it, to see people's responses to it and a lot of people getting emotional about it And, my walking around I felt like a little celebrity. It's like when they realized it was me I was the curator of it. The response to that was humbling. It was pretty cool.
I also didn't expect it to take as long as it did to go through. You expect, okay, I'll spend a half an hour, 45 minutes. I remember feeling like this when I went through the Holocaust Museum in high school. They drop us off and it takes 3 hours to go through. And you're like, wow, there's a lot to see. And it was similar with this. I think it took an hour and a half to walk all the way through and really actually get a sense of, make sure you saw everything and
Yeah.
take everything in. And for it to only be a third of the collection is pretty remarkable. So let's talk about, I know that there was a couple surprises. Maybe we could talk about the baseball first, since we
Right.
teased that at the beginning. So
Yes.
maybe
But
an unfortunate surprise before the exhibit opened.
yeah, so we had, working with the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis had its pitfalls. There were some challenges with it, and one of the challenges was that they had, unbeknownst to me and my team, had changed their security detail and how this thing was going to go, and that didn't play well with me. And when I found out, I brought it up to them and I said, I'm challenged by this, and they said, well, this will be enough, this will be enough, and sure enough, during the setup, as we were doing setup, the security detail faltered that they had changed, and a guy came in, and we do have it on camera. We have every second he was in there on camera, which was 32 seconds. Guy walked in, and a baseball that I personally got signed by Pope Francis myself back in 2015 was in a case, and the case had not yet been sealed shut because we were still doing setup. And he went, grabbed it, and walked out. And so, in the process of the exhibit, that I lost an item, and it was before the exhibit actually opened. It was during the setup time, so that really set the tone, which was not a positive tone for the rest of the exhibit. And I remember, having one of my people reach out to one of our lawyers about, what are we held to if there's another thing gets stolen, can we cancel this thing? And because I was ready to cancel it. If another thing
Wow.
happened, I was ready to cancel the whole thing. And yeah, we would have been on firm ground to do that. But the nice thing is that then the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis finally responded to the original security detail. They put that in place, and everything was good from there on out. But as a result of their changing things at the 11th hour, something was stolen of mine, which is I'm not happy about. But
Yeah.
I remind myself it's just
Right.
stuff, right?
Well,
So
yeah, it's probably a little bit easier to say that about an 11-year-old baseball as opposed to a 800-year-old item or a 1,500
right,
year old
this is true. But Pope
relic of the
Francis
saints,
is
but
not signing
still,
baseballs anymore.
right? Yes,
And
there.
and
Yeah,
I
that
got
is
it
very
in
true.
person, so it's my personal connection, that one experience I had with him.
Right, right. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. Well, I mean, at least thanks be to God, nothing else
Exactly.
was stolen.
Yep,
But yeah. So then another surprise, a much more positive surprise,
yep.
is, and was it on the first day
First
of the
day.
exhibit? You had a surprise
That's
visitor
right.
that's
Yeah,
now become a somewhat of a friend, both
a
him and his wife.
friend.
But yeah, tell that story.
Yeah, so that was great. So I would say that for me personally, the biggest plus of the whole thing was that, what you're talking about. The very first day, I'm walking around, it's kind of exciting, kind of nerve-wracking. A guy comes up to me, probably around 70 years old, says, "Hey, I got some pictures I want to show you." It's like, "Okay, what's this gonna be all about?" So takes out his phone, he shows in it is a picture of himself, which he pointed out that was him, and seminarian Bob Prevost. They had gone to CPE together, clinical pastoral education, which is a very intense program that's usually around 10, 12 weeks long, of working at a chaplaincy when you're in the seminary. And so there's only 5 people in the program, and Bob Prevost, had gone to a CPE in the state of Minnesota. And this guy was a Lutheran pastor, had did CPE with Bob back in the 1980s. And so it's like, I was kind of shocked. It's like, holy smokes. I thought that was super cool. They're showing me super cool pictures, like the Pope on a snowmobile, and so it's like, so then I walked around a little bit more. That I thought to myself, I better reconnect with these people. And so then I went up to them and I said to them, I said, people are getting selfies with me, but I want my selfie with you. So I got my selfie with the couple, and then we swapped. I don't know why he did it, but we swapped cell phone numbers, and then we swapped the pictures that we had took, and then, yeah, we hit it off. So it was like that kind of stopped that day. We never we communicated a couple of times via text, but then towards the end, I said, "Let's do lunch. It's the last weekend. Let's do lunch." So he and his wife. It was the weekend you were there, actually.
Hmm.
So was that
Right.
the last weekend?
It was, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so then we did lunch in the at the Mall of America, and we really hit it off. We really hit it off, and that's when I invited you to come, and then you were sat down with us, and we were talking to some of the Pope's closest friends for 50 years, and so yeah, we have communicated. They've been up to Duluth a couple of times to come and visit me. They come and talked at my parish. I interviewed them in front of a large crowd. They were on my radio show for EWTN radio that I have, and so, yeah, we've become really good friends, and now what I'm doing with them right now is that they're going to Rome next month to hang out with Bob, and that's what they call
Yeah,
him Bob.
maybe we could take a quick pause. For anybody who might have missed it, Bob Prevost, aka Pope Leo XIV.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah. And
yeah,
I'm referring to him as Bob because that's what they call him. And so it's like I'm sitting there having dinner with them. I've had dinner a couple times. And I find myself referring to him as Bob because that's what they're talking about. And I got to remind myself this is not Bob. This is Pope Leo. But so they're going next month in May to hang out with Pope Leo, and so I'm arranging a lot of the stuff for them because I'm like a tour guide in Rome.
neat. Yeah,
So they're very happy that I'm helping out with that. So.
wow.
And I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, it was of all the things that of all the fruits and graces that you expected to have from the exhibit, the Lord somehow found a way to weasel in one
Yeah,
that was just not
yeah.
on your radar at all,
It
right?
was not on my radar. And I will say this, and it is on my website, peopleartifacts.com right now, but they were, if you may or may not remember when we had lunch and you came and sat down at the tail end of the lunch, she had brought a letter that he had written to them back in 1984. And it's like, but she only brought a copy of it. She had a really good photocopy of it. And it's like a full page, single space typed. And then it's all about what he's doing in his life and how he's planning to get to Peru. He really wants to get to Peru, but he doesn't know if it's going to work out, what he's doing in Rome. And then he does a long postscript in his own hand about his mom and how she's going through cancer treatments. He just signs it off as Bob. And and so they brought that copy of it. I thought I didn't look at it, I didn't read it or anything like that, but I was kind of excited. It's like that's super cool. But then when they came up to Duluth, like a couple weeks later, they gave me the actual letter. So I mean, it's like I'm super humbled by that because it's like this was a letter to them in 1984 when he was a brand new priest, and they gave it to me. So like I just can't believe it. So that I'm it's a prized possession of mine. Very touching that they would give it to me. I'm very humbled by that.
Yeah, certainly. I remember when you and I were talking about this some when you had told me about this a little while ago, after they'd given it to you, just reading the words that then, Father Prevost
Yeah,
was writing, but now to see the Pope write, or, words that the Pope had written, that it's just so simple and so kind. The Pope being a good friend. Not that we would expect anything different than that,
yeah,
but it was just, yeah, it was so special and unique to see something, yeah, that's now historical that, they had
yeah.
probably just had stored away somewhere.
And the part that the part to me that was most important for the content is always talking about his desire to go to Peru and that it's not necessarily on the horizon. He hopes that someday it'll happen because by all accounts, his experience in Peru is what really led him up the hierarchical, ladder in a lot of ways. And so that Peru connection was very cool in the letter, to say the least.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm interested. How did the event at your parish go with them? Was it kind of a question and answer? They give a little
Yeah,
talk or something. It was more of an interview setting. It
yeah, it was
sounded
an
like.
interview. So I had already interviewed them on the radio. And so, I do interviews like you do interviews, so I'm kind of used to it. And so basically we set up 3 chairs, the couple and then myself, and their name is John and Polly Schneider. He's a Lutheran pastor. If you ever did you ever see the video, Leo from Chicago, that documentary that the Vatican actually produced it?
I don't think I've seen. I've heard about it, but I
So you
haven't
can get
actually
it
seen
on
it.
YouTube. It's like 45 minutes long, and they are featured in it a
Oh,
lot,
wow.
at least towards the end of it. But anyhow, so yeah, they were in 2 chairs right next to each other, and then I was chair kind of adjacent to them, and then I was just asking him questions for about 45 minutes, and then we opened it up to the crowd, and I had, for Duluth, it was a pretty good sized crowd. 150, 175 people were there, and the people loved it. The people that I mean, I still get responses, and it's been a couple of weeks now, and or a little over a week. And so comments about how great that was because it's really making him like human. It's because they're talking about all of his like idiosyncrasies and his traits, and you can and again, I mean, this is not a shameful promotion, but if you want to see it, it's actually St. James Catholic Church Facebook page, Duluth, Minnesota. It's one of the reels. And so it's like one of the last 2 or 3 reels so you can see the whole thing. We live streamed it if you want to watch it, but
Yeah,
it
I'll
was
make sure
great.
to link it. Yeah, I'll make sure to link to it in the
Okay.
description for the show. Interesting. It's funny you said that because I forget if it was when you were still sitting there. I know that you went back to the exhibit when you had lunch with them, and then I joined at the end, and then the three of us stayed and chatted for a little while longer. But he was telling a story about at the end of CPE, at the end of their coursework, they were going to go out and celebrate. And I think Bob had finished up all of his stuff. Polly was
Yeah.
just waiting.
Yeah.
John was still stressing out over his paper and was going to be working the whole
Yeah.
night. And he remembers, like, I think he said he came up behind him and like grabbed his shoulders, massaged
it
for a
done.
second, and then kind of shook him or something and said, "Come on, let's
Yeah.
let's go celebrate. Let's go have fun."
Well, and then the
Yeah.
other thing that I know we're not talking about the exhibit, but this experience with these people is that it's become somewhat of a famous photo of the Pope now, somewhat famous. You've seen the picture of the Pope as a young seminarian or priest as one of the Blues Brothers. So um, uh, he went to the movie The Blues Brothers with Bob, and
Oh,
so
he was right there with him.
so he was with them. So and so then Bob grew to love that movie, but John was at the movie with them. The two of them went to the movie.
No
So when
kidding.
you
So
see
he
when you
man,
see Pope Leo dressed up as a Blues Brothers, he went to the movie with this friend of his that now is a friend of mine.
that's really funny, man. It's so yeah. It's just still so surreal to even think about that. I mean, again, obviously the Pope has friends, has people who
Yeah,
knew him all growing
right.
up. It's funny that he has brothers that he still plays Wordle
Yeah,
with or Words with Friends,
yeah,
whatever. But when you encounter that and start hearing the stories and start seeing these, we talk about John Paul II's friends, Pope Benedict's friends, relationship with his siblings, all that sort of thing, and it feels historical because it is. But we're kind of seeing history be formed as we live. But
yeah. That'd
I
be
know you
great.
asked John because one of the pictures was them snowmobiling, and he's wearing a helmet,
Yeah,
and obviously the snowmobile probably is long gone. But
right.
yeah, you said you asked him if the helmet itself still
Yes.
existed.
And he said it was his brother's, and he'll reach out to his brother. And so he did reach out to his brother twice. And his brother said, "No, I already told you, I don't have that anymore." And John, when we had the interview at my parish, he made the point of saying, "I asked my brother twice." And so, no, they didn't have that, but the letter was that would have been super cool to have the Pope snowmobile helmet. But the letter is good. So
Well,
they don't know this yet. Well, I'm not going to say it. Maybe I shouldn't say
that's
this.
good. After we're off the air, I'll edit
Yeah,
this
yeah.
out.
After we're off the air,
That's fine.
yeah.
Um, no, so
maybe
when you, as you,
maybe you want to get that piece off too. So
yeah, that's fine.
yeah.
Um, so as you think back, it was what three? It was 3 weeks, like you
3
said,
weeks, 4
of the
weekends.
exhibit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. What are some of the other highlights? Some of the other, graces, surprises that you can think of that maybe we haven't even talked about.
Kind of I did kind of reference it. It was the watching the response of the people. That was really powerful, especially around the area of the saints. That was always kind of like an area that was always busy. And so I think there was a really emotional connection for a lot of the people with those saints. But people crying, people with tears, and people how they responded to me personally was humbling. It was all, I mean, it was all good. I know that there was a lot of good that came from it, and all sorts of, it's like, I saw some transgender people there that were just totally enjoying it, and people that were totally, you could just by looking at them, you knew that they're not faithful Catholics. It's like, some, and we had all that stuff going on with the whole ICE thing in the Twin Cities at the exact same time, and saw people coming through with like signs on their shirts, anti-ICE, but they were coming to see the exhibit. So it's like I
Wow.
loved the I loved the fact that it was kind of like the melting pot. The melting pot was like everybody was coming. This was not big faithful Catholics. This was everybody. And the other thing that was mentioned a couple of times during the exhibit was that we were very, very conscious that as we were having this exhibit is when all of that immigration crackdown icing was happening at its height. And the thing that was repeatedly said by a number of people was that we are the good news offsetting the bad news in Minnesota because we got a lot of media attention for this thing. And so that was a very positive thing that was like uh, not quite offsetting, but it was a positive news story happening during a lot of negative news stories. And so that was great. It was great that I could be part of that.
Yeah, that's incredible. No, I agree. Was it James Joyce? Is he the one who said, "Here comes everyone"
Oh, yeah.
about the church or
Yep.
something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
The big tent. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was surprised about that. You mentioned items of the saints, so it wasn't just papal artifacts that you had. So you had a brick
Right.
from Saint Therese's
Infirmary.
infirmary wall and a
Yep.
handful of other things.
Yeah, lots of saints autographs. I don't do relics per se, but I mean that's not what I'm into. But the collection and relics can intersect quite a bit, and so I did have some relics there of saints that would be like John Vianney because he was like one of my favorites, and most of the other relics were associated with uh, Pope saints. But so yeah, I guess the Pope saints and then John Vianney because I like John Vianney so much.
Mhm. It was
So
the
yeah,
big honkin' piece of Saint Victor the First bone.
that's right, the first African pope, and so yeah, Victor, and so people were amazed by that because I was like 198 or something like that, it's like,
Right. Yeah.
"Is that really that old?" It's like so yeah, yeah, and so yeah, so people were really in touch with the relics.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's galvanizing one way or the other. You can't not have an opinion about them. They make you feel something. Actually, when I was walking through, there was I think it was like a mom, older 60s, 70s mom and maybe her sister and then her daughter. And it sounded like the daughter maybe was the practicing Catholic or knew some about these
Yep,
sorts of things and the moms didn't really. And so I was just kind of overhearing them having this conversation about relics and one of them was kind of creeped out by him and
yeah,
one was kind of explaining it, but yeah, I love that about you just have to take it at face value because Catholics are big into relics.
yeah, right,
So you
exactly.
just kinda have to, have to sort of deal with it, but I've always been fascinated by that. I don't know how I feel about the job of whoever it was to divvy those up
Cut
after
'em
a
up,
person died, yeah.
right,
But, but
yeah.
still, yeah, it's still cool to have, yeah.
I told you I have done that. 'Cause we have a
Yeah,
cause
you
for
did, right.
we have a cause for canonization of one of our early priests, and, I was in charge of the, opening stages of that, which, included in part the exhumation, so I had oversight of the exhumation of a would soon hopefully soon to be saint at some point. So I was the guy that did that for one.
Yeah, I remember you did tell me about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I'll just, I mean, just as a little more information, was it Monsignor Boo, right, is his name?
Yep, Monsignor Boo, Monsignor Joseph Boo, and there's a website, josephboo.org or .com or something like that. So, yeah, we have a process he hasn't been declared venerable officially, but the communications we've gotten from the Holy See concerning him, the communications refer to him as servant of God,
Oh, interesting.
even though he's not formally with that title yet. But they call him that when we communicate with the Holy
Hmm.
See. So,
Maybe their little internal to-do list,
yeah, yeah,
they refer to him
yeah.
that way, and they're just gonna
And that's
in
pretty
7
excited for us in Duluth area if we do get I mean, hopefully he'll get that title before the end of the year, and that'll be something to celebrate itself.
yeah. Are there any canonized saints other than him? Or are there any, already from the Diocese of Duluth, or would he be the
No,
first one?
there's hardly any saints from the United States. There's very few saints from the United States, and so just a handful. And so to even have a cause from one from the diocese is unique. So,
Yeah, you might expect it from a larger place with more resources, New York,
right,
Denver, something
right.
like that, but yeah,
Yeah,
little Duluth. Yeah.
yeah,
The good news bit that you mentioned reminds me of when Pope Francis came to the United States because something like this just you can't really be mad about it. You can't be spun into bad news. It's like when Pope Francis came to the US, I remember somebody remarked from one of the major news organizations, one of the nightly news anchors, I think, said it was the most positive week of news
yeah,
that they'd ever experienced in their whole life. So I mean, it's no surprise that somebody was remarking about this, that
right.
it's good news to offset the bad because again, how often are you gonna walk into the Mall of America and be able to
And see
see
that.
something
Yeah,
like
and
this?
that was another element. A lot of people were, very pleased with the fact that we had something sacred in the midst of what we'd call profane, it's like not profane in a negative way, but just not religious. In the Mall of America, it's like, one of my former brother seminarians referred to it as not the Mall of America, but the Fall of America. And so it's like, all this commercialism and
Yeah.
stuff and buying all this stuff. And it's like here in the middle of this Mall of America, we've got these relics of saints and of the popes. And so that sacred in the midst of that profane was very good too, because we had a lot after the first week, we got a ton of mall walkers that came in the exhibit. So it's like, and that was something that we were really hoping for. And so it's like the mall traffic really picked up for the last 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks of the exhibit. So that was really great.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah, I guess that's no surprise. I think the demographics of my podcast skew male and skew older,
Yeah.
which I mean, I'm in my mid-30s and I'm only becoming more and more interested in history, so that should be no surprise. But yeah,
Right.
if the mall walkers are walking by, was it a full mile every layer of the mall? If you go
It's
all the
long.
way?
It's long. I stayed at a hotel there attached to the mall for the first 2 weekends. And at least once I walked around all floors all the way around and I was tired and I'm in good health.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that mall, if you've never been to the Mall of America, it's quite a place.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was my first time, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So what's next for the collection? I know you said that there's some other dioceses that are interested potentially, but
yeah,
and what's ultimately your hope? I don't know if we've ever talked about this in your past appearances. What's your, ultimate hope for the
yeah. My
collection?
ultimate
Because
my ultimate hope has developed over the years. It always used to be. It's like, well, I want it somehow stored and displayed in Duluth, Minnesota permanently. That's not really my hope so much anymore. I think my hope right now is, and within realistic, attainment, is to have it become a traveling exhibit, and for education, for evangelization, but as also as a source of revenue, fundraising revenue for my Catholic school. That's what I really want. And there's a ton of interest in it. People are flock to this, and so we know we've got something. It's just a matter of how do we streamline it to make it more effective, because there's a lot of work to do this. Not easy. Just moving it from Duluth to Minneapolis, can't imagine some other place, but we kind of have our eyes on Chicago right now. And there was some rumblings during the exhibit that St. Louis and Chicago, as archdioceses, have reached out to certain people to find out a little bit more about the information. None of them have reached out to us about it. So I think that we are probably Chicago is going to be our next place. In fact, my desire is actually not even the Archdiocese of Chicago, but the Chicago White Sox. I would
oh
love. I
yeah.
don't know what their venues are like, but if we could have something for like a home stand or something like that, it makes perfect sense. I think the White Sox could be interested in something like that, and
Hmm.
so to me that would be a really cool thing. As I mentioned to you before we went on air, is that I'm having some communications now with the John Paul II Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., although I've talked with them in the past several times as well, but they've reached out again about having some things there. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll pray for that. Can you imagine a convergence? Oops, a convergence of White Sox game, Father Rich's collection, and Pope Leo's first pastoral visit to America.
That would be cool. Now that would be cool. Because if he does come, well, he will come. He'll certainly come to Chicago.
Yeah, you'd
You know
think
that. And
in
you'd
the
think that they
summertime.
would and you would think that they would have it at that, stadium.
Yeah.
It
If
just
not a
makes sense.
baseball game that he,
Yeah.
has a seat of prominence, then for
Yeah,
sure mass.
exactly. Yeah.
Our lips to God's ears.
Yeah, exactly. Good
Yeah.
line.
Well, yeah, what's next for you now that this is all done? I think are you done breathing a sigh of relief after all of the heavy lifting
Yeah,
that
it's like
it
giving
took?
I've never given birth, obviously, but I think this is probably the closest thing to it. It's so because people are saying, "Well, where's next? Where's next?" And I would say, "I just gave birth. Let me have a little bit of a break." And so but yeah, I've already been talking to some like the chair of my committee about the idea of Chicago. And again, as I said to you off the air, I'm earnestly trying to obtain a Pope Mobile used by Pope Francis in his 2015 trip to the United States, and it's within reach as well. And so that's something that I'm really working on right now. And so those are the things that are on the forefront of my moment in my eyes when it comes to the collection. In my priesthood, I've got Holy Week staring me down the barrel of the gun right now.
That's
So
right. Only 2 weeks left. Yeah.
yeah.
Which is the reprieve from which? I don't know. So no,
Yeah,
Holy
there's
Week is kind of a gauntlet.
yeah, I always tell everybody, and maybe much scandal, is that my favorite day of the year is Easter Monday, because it's the furthest away I get from Holy Week, and so it's like, yes, we get Easter, it's Easter, so I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Well,
Easter
yeah.
Monday's coming.
In the life of the priest, it's Holy Week and Christmas. Is it how many liturgies packed into about 72 hours, right?
Yeah, Holy Week is far more stressful than Christmas. Christmas is a piece of cake compared to Holy Week.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's understandable.
and Lent in general. It's not just Holy Week, it's Lent. It's our tax season as a tax preparer. So anyhow, we could go on and on.
Well, excellent. Yeah. Thanks again, Father Rich. Yeah, obviously, I had an incredible time, as I mentioned
I'm
at the beginning of the show.
And I'm super happy you came to the exhibit, Matt, because I mean, we've talked via this way and on the phone multiple times, and to meet you in person, it was just great to connect with another Popeaholic, and so I love that.
Yes,
So
yes. We're a small but growing community.
yeah, we are
If we have
small.
anything to say about it, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, excellent. Well, Father Rich Kunst is the guest. Vatican Unveiled was the exhibit, but papalartifacts.com, yeah, is where you can find all the info on all of it. Yeah, and hopefully I need to follow up with it was Monica, right? Your one of your
yes,
right hand gals
yep,
about a new website, new and
yes,
improved. So we'll have to
yes,
keep an eye out for that. And yeah,
yes.
I'm glad to help with it however I can.
That would be great. So yeah,
Yeah, maybe the last thing before we go, you told me before we started recording, but what are the things behind you for
yeah.
those
So it's
watching
like
the video
so
version of the
right now
podcast?
the little view of myself is a little kittywampus now, so I don't see it like what we saw earlier. But there's a chair right behind me, and that chair was used by Pope Pius XII. Above the chair is a framed item, like on that same wall, which was a letter from John Paul II to President Jimmy Carter. And so that's pretty cool. In fact, that's the first formal communication between the Pope John Paul, and the U.S. president. And then alongside of that, on that same wall, is a large framed item signed twice by Pope Julius II in 1504. So that's super cool. So those are the things. Those are the papal things that I think you can see behind me.
Yeah, then the cannon, right, is just in front of you
There's a
off
cannon is like,
screen.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of like below me. You can't really see. It's a little bit below me. But yeah,
And
a cannon owned by Pope Pius IX.
yeah, wow. And just in case you run into the guy who stole your baseball,
Yeah, I get
have the papal gun.
or the cannon.
Disclaimer, again, fine
Yeah,
print.
yeah. This is
We're
not.
just
This is.
joking.
I've never shot this, so I'm never not gonna shoot a person with it. That's for sure.
If there ever was like a YouTube short series with Father Rich, it would be fun to take some of those, get a gunsmith or somebody who knows how to not break it and see if it could
You
still fire after all these years.
Let me tell you something before we go off the air. So I've got a guy that I have good communication with, although we haven't talked for a while, who he's a gun dealer. I think he's in Arizona, and his primary thing is Papal States guns.
Really?
Yes. He's an
How about
expert.
that?
So everything that anytime I do anything trying to obtain a Papal States gun, I go to him, and he can tell me everything and anything about it.
Wow.
He's amazing. He might be a good guest to have.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
I mean, how many people are like a hobbyist about Papal State guns? Not
Yeah.
many.
Probably less than 10 in the whole world. I don't know.
Less than 3 maybe. I don't know.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there's a tip. So if
yeah,
anybody out there is looking for Papal States guns, know there's a guy in Arizona who can hook you up.
yep, yep, exactly.
Oh, great. Well, this was a joy as always, Father Rich.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
appreciate you
Matt.
taking the time.
Absolutely. God bless.